right. I'd like to start off by saying Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Most People Don't Know What's Coming, or something along those lines. You know, most people have no clue what's coming. And pretty much I just finished watching Millennium 2000, which that was introduced to me back in the 90s by the Elder Apostle Tahar. We used to watch different documentaries, at the Ponderosa, and, back then, the Millennium 2000, and then you had Lucifer 2000 that came out after that. And we had Jordan Maxwell, Terry Cook, and Ray, in that, what you call it, in that, you could say, for lack of words, documentary. And they were dropping a lot of information that was going over people's heads back then. A lot of, I'm talking about point after point after point after, just the whole plans of the illuminated ones and what they've been up to and how they set everything up and the plans that they had, and the leaders that they put in place, the presidents, world leaders, and how they would meet at the Bohemian Grove, which is in Sonoma County, California, twice a week, the last 2 weeks of July, hammering out policies and, what wars are going to be played, who's going to play the bad guy, who's going to be the good guy, blase, who's going to be, so on and so forth. And one thing that Terry Cook was, mainly speaking on, because Terry Cook, his main thing was speaking about the cashless society that was coming, and how they're going to implant people with a micro C-hip, and even he, back then, even he could see that, and like I said, well, like Elder Pastor R said, he knew about this before. I knew about, cashless society, but I really didn't know too much about it. I heard about it, Ansar Allah community, Muslims used to speak about it a lot. They used to speak about the credit cards and how that's shifting payments, from cash to, to something that's cashless, so on and so forth. And, nevertheless, that whole interaction that they had, Terry Cook, Jordan Maxwell, and mainly Terry Cook, they were dropping it, and they said that the banksters, oligarchy, the evilarchy, as they called them, well, actually, Anthony Hilder called them. They said they wanted all this to be done by the year 2000. Now, a lot of those things that they spoke about in that video didn't happen by the year 2000, but they still, were in the works. Today, we are 2025. The whole infrastructure of everything that they were speaking about back then is actually happening, and the difference. Well, Terry Cook, he knew some precepts, some scriptures. I don't know his extensive knowledge of how much he knew in the scriptures and all that, but I know that he didn't understand a lot of different mysteries, but he did understand the mystery of the MOTB, which is, sad to say, that we can't, it's sad to say that we can't say the same for some of these Israelite groups out here. Nevertheless, and this is why the scriptures say we are not ignorant to Satan's devices. I'm going to try to quote scriptures as best as I can, if I see anything on the comment board, that goes along with the lesson, I'll add it to the lesson. But, 2000 came and went, none. Everybody was pretty much sleeping because everybody was looking for the Y2K and a lot of things that happened in that time. Nothing really happened, so people fell asleep. And then on September 2001, you had that a great incident that happened. Now that great incident that happened was when three of the main towers of the World Trade Center were brought down. And it's not just it wasn't just a couple of buildings or three buildings or whatever the case may be. It was an attack, so called, on the money or the trade of the world. Why is that? Because that was the beginning stages of them rebuilding this whole new system. And the whole new system would be the taking down of the old system, which would be the cash, which would be this the USD or the FRNs, which is the Federal Reserve notes, US dollar, and the currencies of the world. Remember, it was the World Trade Center, and that would bring about the new system, which every time you have a new age or a new world order emerge, eventually would be the micro CHIP. And this is why we see everything going digital right now, and this is the reason why this whole system is being set up the way it is. It's pretty much in place now. But when them men were talking back then, and even we were speaking about a lot of stuff back then that that didn't happen until many years later. Some of you brothers that are out there teaching now, when you first started coming in, there wasn't a whole lot going on. I mean, the MOTB system was really starting to catch on, a little here, a little there, and other things were happening, but not on the level that they happened within the last 5 years, and even further, a little further back than that. So the thing is, when these things are right, I'm not sure how much of that it got caught. Right, I'm not sure how much of that it got caught on there. They kind of cut off for a moment. But nevertheless, as we see, these things are, even though it took time, the Lord said, go out there, tell them, whether they hear, whether they forbear, give them a warning. Don't worry if they don't believe it or not, because there's going to come a time when everything that I've said is going to come to pass. And it's not because we said it, because there was a lot of things that we spoke back then that didn't happen till later, beginning with Elder Pastor on down, and some of the other brothers out there that teach the same doctrine that we teach, without deviating. But the point is that, now we see everything playing out as the Lord said it would happen, and you have to understand that when we speak about these things, especially, just dealing with the MOTB system, the Apostle John saw, this system. He saw the people being implanted with these devices. He saw people being rejected for not using this particular device, to be able to, to be able to conduct business. He saw Israelites getting beheaded, for denying this this MARK, which is the MOTB, because ultimately these are and have been the goals of the international banking families, which are the ones working behind the scenes, and they have a plan, an agenda, and whoever doesn't, get involved with their agenda, eventually they plan on rubbing them out one way or the other, whether it's through slow death, poisoning, air, water, food, or whatever the case may be, med to the K to the shun, and everything else, getting rid of them, because they don't need the majority of the people on the planet. And even in that Millennium 2000, they even spoke about depopulation pretty much, and how they want to get rid of a lot of people on the planet Earth, and they didn't mention the Georgia Guidestones, which the Georgia Guidestones, if I'm not mistaken, have been around since since 1982, if I'm not mistaken. You know, if a brother want to fact check that, Revelation 12:12, it says, "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." That's right. You know, shalom to you sincere, you know, members of the elect out there. You know, so these devils know that they have but a short time. You know, so the Georgia Guidestones, before it was destroyed a few years ago, you know, had the plans of what they wanted to do. You know, all throughout time, you had different, you know, individuals that spoke about the depopulation program. They spoke about, you know, reducing the population of the earth. You know, and you know, most people look at that and say this person is bugging. You know, they off they rocker, they're conspiracy theorists. You know, but nevertheless, all of the signs are there. You know, they bring it out in movies, and when we talk about movies or different, you know, series or whatever the case they bring out, they'll people will talk shit about us, but nevertheless, are the things that we've said and the things that have been placed in these movies 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, are they playing out on the planet today? And if they're playing out on the planet today, that means that it was an agenda all along. You see, this is why you have the saying, it's not a conspiracy theory anymore, it's a conspiracy fact, because they're actually coming to pass, they're actually happening. You know? So like I said, I believe it was 1982, somebody named Christian something, you know, that was, I believe that was their pen name, you know, and pretty much, you know, these are the people that set up, or the person that set up this, you know, the Georgia Guidestones. And when you read it, it was in 8 different languages, and there were 10, you know, 10 agenda was 10 different things, trying to mimic, you know, the commandments, because this is what Esau does. He tries to do everything on the left hand side, and the very first one was maintain humanity under 500 million, you know, in perfect balance with nature or something along those lines, you know, because their whole plan has always been to depopulate people, you know, to get rid of the majority of people. You had, you know, he, you know, gave the speech about how to get rid of the problem. You know, one of the problems were people, so-called carbon, which there's nothing wrong with carbon. Carbon, you know, the earth, everything in the earth, if you leave everything as it's supposed to be, everything in the earth, you know, refreshes itself, you know, it cleans itself. The earth has its own immune system. You know, trees take in carbon monoxide and give out oxygen. But you leave it up to this devil, he gonna destroy everything, you know? So you know, we see the plans of the illuminated ones, you know, playing out. But most people are blinded. They can't see what's coming, you know, because of their, you know, well, basically because they're in gross darkness, as it says in Isaiah, the 60th chapter. You know, that there will be a gross darkness upon the people. And this is why they can't see it. The only reason why we can see it is because the Lord opened up our eyes and brought us out of that darkness. Otherwise, we would have been right there with them. You know, so, you know, the Lord is revealing all of these things, telling us what's going on, but the majority of people still behind the scenes can't see it. And the thing is that this, you know, these different agendas that these devils have been spoken about. We spoke about it many times. You've had other individuals, what they call truthers, bringing out information and facts and history and information on the plans that these devils have nowadays, you know, or that they have as a whole, you know. And the scriptures, see, what separates us from them is we have the scriptures, and we can actually go into the scriptures and, you know, put the pieces together. You know, like the new world order, the monetary system, you know, we know that it's the MOTB system. We know that the MARK in the book of Revelation is talking about, you know, the micro CHIP, because that's going to be the form of payment that the only form of payment that they're going to want to accept, whether it's in the hand, in the forehead, or wherever, whatever augmented part of the body they want to put it on. But the main thing is that it's going to be in people, and it's not a coincidence that they're getting people, you know, used to scanning everything, used to palm prints and different things of that nature, so that people can be used to that already. So it's already second nature. It's just like when you go to the bathroom, you don't turn the light on. You use the bathroom, you get up, you wash your hands, and then you leave. And the first thing is you want to turn the light off, because of your subconscious is already, geared to turn the light off, even though the light was already off. So this is what the international banking families are doing. They're getting the people accustomed to swiping their hands, to swiping their palms, to using, biological, identifications in order to make these different transactions, because they plan on bringing everything into a digital system. And it's already in place. All they got to do is either create a crisis or have the right crisis to where they can bring this thing on board. And Trump, he's on a war path as far as pushing these agendas forward, which is a good thing, because remember, since 2020, even though you had that nut Biden in there and that bug out Kamala, since 2020, they've really been pushing, you had Trump back there, but they're really pushing, this whole, implosion of the U.S. dollar, and the nations wanting to get away from the dollar, but set up a digital system, because all of these nations are all up to the same thing. They're all up to pushing a digital system, digital coins, or should I say digital currencies, So this is the Lord making them do that. But behind the scenes, what the people don't see is that the banking families and the leaders of these people are manipulating these things, to get people to do that, and they're painting different narratives. Like, don't worry, you won't lose your credit card, you won't lose your money, you won't be able to get robbed, because it's a part of you. You don't have to worry about losing anything. So they'll paint it as a thing of convenience, which it will be convenient, but it will be detrimental to those that take it. So these people don't know what's going on. They can't fathom, the government and these different leaders and, for lack of words, a handful of, businessmen behind the scenes manipulating all of these moves that they see going on in the earth, and this is why when you have movies and you have presidential elections and you have different meetings with governments, the leaders of these governments, you have a lot of different hand gestures, and these hand gestures are to let the insiders know that they're down with the plan, and there's a lot of symbolism, a lot of stuff that's out here, within, just businesses and all that are letting people know, or the ones that are in the know, that all of this stuff is set up to bring the world, into this agenda that they have been striving for since 1776, which was May 1st, 1776. That's why that's on the back of the dollar bill, and that Millennium 2000, they were speaking about that. They were breaking down the symbolisms of the dollar, and you can't really find that on YouTube, even though I did find it on YouTube. And out of all places, I found it on one of Sonetta's pages, Millennium 2000, Lucifer 2000, So if you type that in, you may be able to find it, or they may have taken it down already. I ended up downloading it, and I made a MP3 file, so I have it in my phone. So whenever I feel like listening to something like that, I just don't hit the button, So So yeah, I just wanted to make mention of that because as I was sitting there listening, I said, you know what, all this stuff going on, these men were speaking about this back then, and then it didn't really happen, but it's happening now, and the majority of these people, still don't have a clue of what's going on. They still can't conceive in their mind that you have a handful of men behind the scenes manipulating everything that you see, and they're thinking that everyone has a choice, and that nations have choices, and there's such thing as real as free trade and all of that stuff. No, it's all manipulated behind the scenes. You just can't see it because your eyes are not open to it, and you're not privy to what's going on. But you have some that are privy to it, and some people have leaked some information, like Carol Quigley. He leaked some of the information, of these bankers, because the scriptures say that they will cause a mouth to fall upon themselves. So as you see the world, moving fast towards this, digital system, just know that it was already, spoken of and written in the scriptures before it even came to pass. So just feel blessed that you're able to see not only what's going on, but to have the understanding of the scriptures, to back up everything that we see going on today, and it's going to be a hell of a ride. So right now, the Lord, He just, putting in His finishing touches on this masterpiece that He's about to bring, and He's allowing these scoffers to talk. They talk, to mock, laugh at brothers, about getting, which, they're getting material from Michael's, which is one of those, places like Hobby Lobby and Joanne Fabrics, where you get stuff, for when you have hobbies and stuff like that. You can make fun of it. Yeah, brothers probably did get it from there, but so what? Scriptures say we will wear sackcloth. And you could mock all you want, but what the Lord is doing is He's pretty much sealing a lot of these individuals' fate. Just like that video, the Rasta Skank video, years ago on YouTube, it went viral, and the majority of people on there were talking nothing but cash money shit. So the Lord used that video in that situation to seal a lot of people for their doom. And then Elder Pastor brought out a brilliant observation that video, the very next video after that, the next part, the Elder Pastor was going into the MOTB out of all things. So they got to that video and they wouldn't watch anything else because they got offended. That's why the Lord said, blessed is he that's not offended in me. And He said, many shall be offended. So if they wouldn't have got offended, they would have been able to go to the next video and get more edification, and insight to the system that's out here right now that wasn't really out that prevalent back then. Heavy, man. It's just heavy. It's just a master, the master chess playing strategies of all time. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say shalom.